which brings up a great question. What is it about horror movies? Like, how have these early horror films, and we're going to transition from the golden age into the silver age. In fact, let's do that now. Well, this is the horror films, the Silver Age. Now consider yourself transitioned. Okay, great. That was a terrible bit. So terrible bit.
Awesome.
Um, so like transitioning from the 30s and in the early 40s into the late 40s, 50s, and 60s, which I think we can, kind of affectionately refer to as the Silver Age of horror. Um, a lot of even in the golden age there were a lot of films that taught us morality, and I feel like that just kind of amped up more in the silver age of films as storytelling became more important, and it relied less on visuals and more of kind of the theme, but like really delving deep into character a little bit. How did we learn morals from the Silver Age of films as opposed to the Golden Age?
Well, this is interesting because after World War II, America goes through a massive transition. We suddenly come out of this with not only a booming economy, but you have all of these people who went away to war and became engineers, mathematicians, scientists, and now they're set loose on the country, and they're putting that new tech to work. With the end of World War II, you have a rise of the Soviet Union. So you've got the threat of communism that follows on the coattails of World War II. So you have a boom in interest in technology, and science can solve anything, but you also have a threat of science. Science is a threat of changing things. So I really like the 1950s because you have two films that were made in the same year. You have The Thing from Another World, and you have, of course, I flat out blank on it right now and have to look it up.
Sorry, as
Me,
you're doing that, I'm currently looking for a photo of thing from another world.
Oh
So
yeah.
here's
Well,
just kind of a
the inspiration for, of course,
John Carpenter's
the
thing.
thing, which is a quintessential horror film, maybe not the quintessential horror film, but a quintessential horror film. And let's see.
Okay, so what?
It's a film where the guy comes from outer space with Gort. Why am I blanking on the name? It's because I'm in the horror mindset, not the sci-fi mindset. He comes down, lands in Washington D.C. with
Oh,
the solar.
oh, um,
Gort comes.
uh, yeah, remade with Keanu Reeves in the '90s.
Yes, unfortunately.
Wow, I can perfectly see this in my mind. I can't.
Isn't that stupid that I'm
I know
blanking on this right
exactly what
now?
you're talking about. Oh man, if anybody's watching this,
Day the Earth stood still. The day the Earth stood
that's the
still.
one. Day the Earth stood still.
Oh, that's super
Woof.
embarrassing. Okay, so you've got in 1951, you have the day the Earth stood still, and you have the thing from another
Yep.
world. Okay, so the day the Earth stood still, the guy comes from outer space. He doesn't want to talk to the military. He doesn't want to talk to the world leaders. What he wants to do is talk to the scientists. And he says, you guys need to figure this thing out because your military has gone nuts. They've completely turned into this megalomaniacal military-industrial complex, and they're going to destroy the world. But not only that, they're going to start turning their guns into outer space. And as soon as they point them at us, we've got a problem, and we're going to wipe you out. Right. So the film, despite all the military might, puts its trust in the scientists to become the peacekeepers. The thing from another world does the exact opposite. In that film, you've got the thing that lands and winds up in the ice. They dig it out of the ice, and it starts to transform. It doesn't do what it does in John Carpenter's The Thing, which is take on the form of other people. But what it does do is start eating everybody and cannibalizing them and destroying them. And it's this soulless monster. All the scientists want to study it, and all the military guys are not like, no, we need to just kill it. That's the best thing to do. And so that treats the scientists as guys that are more interested in intellect and the pursuit of knowledge than preserving the human species, essentially. And they're both tackling the same idea, an outside threat. One relies on science, one relies on military might. So you've got those two perspectives kind of duking it out in the 1950s. You've got sci-fi horror films like Them, where all this pursuit of nuclear technology has created these mutant monsters that come and destroy people. And then across the ocean, you've got Japan dealing with its scars from the atomic bomb attack on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which becomes Godzilla. That's Godzilla is essentially a metaphor for the destruction that the Japanese suffered at the end of World War II. So you have those things as well.
Godzilla film was what, 59?
It was 54.
Okay.
And it's an honest-to-God horror film.
Yeah.
It's a dread.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very serious film. It's not campy like a lot of the later on.
Well,
Godzilla
that brings
movies.
up an interesting philosophical question, because what's the difference between a scary movie and a horror film?
It's sometimes a thin line.
Yeah.
One of the things I really enjoy is when I see a director that started in horror, like say you have somebody like Sam Raimi or Peter Jackson, and they go on to make other movies. But in those movies, you have horror elements which are far scarier than most other films because they cut their teeth on making horror films. A good example, the things that are scary in the Lord of the Rings series, like Shelob's Lair. Only a horror film director could do that. Only somebody who really deeply understands it can pull that sort of thing off. And you've got Sam Raimi making the Spider-Man films, but you have scenes like the scene where Dr. Octopus escapes from the hospital, which is a straight-up Evil Dead style horror.
Sure is. Yeah, it was. Right. And if you're not familiar with Sam Raimi's style of filmmaking, that scene, which at the time when I saw it, I was not familiar with Sam Raimi at all, and that scene was very jarring. Because it's not, it doesn't really gel with the rest of the film. Because the rest of the movie is just a very beautiful, very elegant, very heroic kind of movie. And then you see that one scene, and you're like, why? And it's
but you really see what he's capable of,
shocking,
right?
and it's fun, and it was fun.
Yeah. Yes. The splat stick is what I call it.
So.
And what it's often called.
Earlier, I mentioned the idea of like what's the difference between horror and scary. In my experience,
I'd like to know what you think it is. Because
in my experience, because I love the idea, I love the concept of horror films, right? I think they're fun. I think they're entertaining. I think they can be fun, depending on, like you said, like sometimes there's a fine line, right? I definitely think that there is an idea of instilling fear into the audience, and I would call that a scary movie. Jurassic Park, my favorite movie of all time, hands down. I contend it's a horror film. It's a monster movie. People are, trapped, being chased by things that they don't understand, things that they can't really contend with face to face, because if they do, the dinosaurs will eat their heads off. So things that they just desperately need to get away from, but, they're put into these circumstances and they can't. I contend that is a horror movie. Contagion, as you talked about before, that's a horror movie. And there are horror movies that are, kid friendly. Paranorman, Hocus Pocus. There's a handful of horror films that are kind of kid friendly in a way, and
Coraline,
that's really creepy. Just
such a disturbing movie.
It's really good. I like it a lot. But scary, there's something about a film, and earlier you talked about like Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson, and I maybe even put Steven Spielberg into the mix. There's a certain type of filmmaker that wants to evoke emotion. Like as a comedian, I want people to feel whatever kind of an emotion it is that I'm putting out there. If I'm doing comedy, I want you to laugh. If I'm doing drama, I want you to cry, or at least like feel what it is that I as an actor am feeling, right? But as a horror director or a scary movie director, I think that their purpose, they specifically want the audience to feel scared. They want them to feel fear. Stephen King,
Mm-hmm.
masterful at that in writing books, and I would even contend that the new It movie, scariest movie
Mm-hmm.
I've ever seen in my life, hands down. Period. I couldn't sleep for 4 months. I slept.
It's a
Ooh,
classic. I love that.
scared me
I love
to
that film.
death. But
Yeah,
the
so
audiences
good.
had the same reaction when Psycho came out. Audiences had the same reaction when Frankenstein came out. Audiences had the same reaction when Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we'll get into kind of the more those films in a minute. But there's something about scary movies that tries to infuse fear into the viewer, and I'm one of those people that I think it's also dependent on the viewer as well, because not everybody experiences the same movie the same way, right? So the way that I view film and visual storytelling is I put myself in the place of the hero. Whoever the hero is, whoever the main character is, whatever. I'm excited for Captain America to save the day. I'm excited for Frodo to throw the ring into Mount Doom. I'm excited for I can't think of any of the heroes' names in the movie It, but whatever. I'm excited for the Losers Club. I'm excited for the Losers Club
Yeah,
to defeat Pennywise. And so I
right.
emotionally put myself in the place of those characters. And I think that's why I love fandom so much. I love Star Wars because I emotionally see myself as Luke Skywalker. I emotionally see myself as who's behind me? Yeah, Captain America, Guillermo del Toro. Who's over here? Star Wars, Wonder Woman, X-Men, Ninja Turtles. I see myself as these characters, and I make an emotional relationship with the on-screen characters. And if the on-screen character
Right.
is sad, well then I'm sad. And if the on-screen character is terrified, guess what? So I think it's a
Right.
two-part.
You wrap yourself into
Yeah,
it.
I think it's a two-part. Um,
So I think that rather than fear, I use the word dread because a movie that really establishes dread really
yeah,
works. I think that the film Guillermo del Toro's film Crimson Peak did a wonderful job of establishing dread uh, because
never seen it, but
it
it looks like the kind of movie that I want to see, but I know I won't be able to handle it.
it's just wonderful. It really is, and Guillermo del Toro and Peter Jackson make just the best ghosts ever. Like their ghosts are like leagues beyond anybody else's ghosts. They're so good. Um, but in those films, of course, in all of Guillermo del Toro's movies, he wants you to relate to the monster, and you start out thinking that this is about somebody else, but generally the story is usually winds up being about the monster, the misunderstood
Sure.
monster, and that makes a lot of sense because a lot of his favorite movies are movies like Frankenstein and Dracula and the Mummy and King Kong. He loves King Kong. Uh, so Ray Harryhausen is one that both Del Toro and Peter Jackson followed the three monster rules. So the
Mm,
three monster rules is a monster is concerned with really three things: food, shelter, and family. And if you make a monster and you make them concerned with those three things, that's all the motivation they need. They want shelter, they want food, and they want to protect their family. And then at that point, you have a monster that will be scary, but you can also empathize with. And Ray Harryhausen was brilliant at that. With every monster he created, he put personality into it. He put motivation behind those. And that's what was so cool about Jurassic Park, because it was the very first movie to really make dinosaurs scary. And
oh
that was
yeah.
very true of Michael Crichton's book too. When I read that book, I was blown away because it had never occurred to me that dinosaurs were scary. Like it just never crossed my mind.
No,
But of course they are. They're freaking
they're
terrifying.
terrifying.
What if there's nothing you could do. So
So for
before they just kind of lumped around like this, and they would strike at you and you poke at it with sticks, but it wouldn't get any closer. But these things are fast.
Well,
They're behind
like you were
you.
saying with King Kong, going back to King Kong, the stop motion, that was our only real like on screen depiction of dinosaurs. Was like these little things that kind of go around, they eat plants, and maybe they fight with each other, but man, they're fine. You're like, nah, you can't really see yourself in them. But
Well, there's a fantasy aspect of it that allows you to separate yourself from what they are.
yeah,
You can say, well, that's
mm-hmm.
special effect. Jurassic Park was the first movie where you go, I don't know how they did that. Like when I watched that T-Rex scene for the first time in the theater, I had no idea how they did it. And I was in film school at the time. I was studying visual effects work. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, as far as I know, that's a real dinosaur. That's as far as I can guess. I think they got a real dinosaur and they put it in a movie, and that's what happened.
So going back to the Silver Age of horror films, what is it about the Silver Age of horror films that was a reflection of the times? And when I think of the Silver Age, I think of Psycho. I think of Night of the Living Dead. We see the emergence of zombies. Like zombies kind of became a very popular thing at the time. We see a lot of pulp fiction happening.
Mm-hmm. So Night of the Living Dead, if you're gonna say pick one of any of the horror films, pick one. If you
Hey
only have
Ron,
one,
if you can only pick one of the horror films, and I'm not even going to give a qualifier, but if you can only pick one of the horror films, what do you pick?
Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, interesting.
You can write a book on it. So Night of the Living Dead was made in 1968. What was happening in 1968?
Civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement. You've got Vietnam. You've got women's rights movement, right? So those are the things that are kind of pulling people apart. And now you look back on it and go, well, there was a civil rights movement, and Martin Luther King did a march, and now black people can do stuff. And oh yeah, the women's rights movement. Well, they wanted some rights, and they got some rights, and everybody was cool with that. And they don't take into account the turbulent conflict. And I don't think until maybe this year can we truly understand how people can be so bitterly divided on something. But there were just as many people fighting against the civil rights movement, against women's rights, and for the Vietnam Wars. There were people fighting against it.
Sure.
So what Night of the Living Dead does is it puts a big fat magnifying glass on it. And if you just watch the Night of the Living Dead as a zombie film, which I did when I was a kid, you go, that was pretty cool, pretty scary zombie film. And essentially it's the first of the modern zombie films. It's the first where zombies eat people and lumber around and eat brains and do all the things that zombies do.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the first time we actually saw a human being chewing on what we perceive to be human flesh. Correct?
I believe so.
Shocking.
And
Shocking.
It was a low budget film shot in black and white on 16 millimeter, and it made it big. It was kind of the first Blair Witch Project, where this thing that probably wasn't supposed to be a big hit became a huge hit.
Right.
Why did it become a huge hit? Because it just pinned that zeitgeist right to the wall. It struck a nerve. Even if people didn't know what it was about, that's what it's about. And George Romero says, I was just trying to make a scary zombie movie. I wasn't trying to make a cultural commentary, but it is the thickest, densest, strongest cultural commentary I've ever seen. So you've got the hero of the film, who's a young black man, right?
Yep.
And you've got the heroine
unintentional
of the film.
Casting, by the way. Unintentional casting.
Right.
It just happened that way.
You accidentally create a magnificent allegory just because the universe is just tuned in, and that's how it happens. So you've got a young black man and a young white woman as the protagonists of the film, right? So they hide out in a house, in a field, where the dead are coming to get them. The dead are essentially the forces of the outside world saying, you're going to be one of us, you're going to be one of us, you're going to be one of us. Zombies are always an unstoppable force that we feel like we can't challenge. So when George Romero made Dawn of the Dead, he was talking about consumerism, must buy, must buy, must buy. When he made his other movies, every time he shows zombies, they're an allegory for something. But in this case, they were an allegory for white society essentially saying, don't resist, just be like us, just shut up, just calm down, quiet down, don't make too many waves, just be like us. So later we discover in the basement of this house, there's a family. There's a hot-headed conservative guy with his tight shirt and his buzz cut, and he's got his wife and daughter downstairs, and he's saying, "We have to hide in the basement." Metaphorically and literally, we have to hide in the basement. And if we just hide in the basement and do what we've always been doing and just hide, everything's going to be fine. And there's Obama / our protagonist going, nope, the world has changed. You've got to change with it. If you don't
Right.
change with it, you're going to be eaten. And we've got to move on. Everything's changed now. You have to adapt. And the guy says, nope, not going to adapt. You're wrong. I'm right. We're hiding in the basement.
Yeah.
What happens? His daughter gets bitten. She bites him. They all die. Right?
The establishment is to its own demise.
Right. So you have the young, the young upstarts against the old school conservatives. And you watch that movie again and again. I've watched that movie, every 3-4 years for pretty much my entire life. And the best thing about good allegory is it's always true. There's always a new application for it.
So here's a question for you, specifically regarding, because I definitely want to move on, but regarding Night of the Living Dead, it's a hallmark, it's a landmark. You talk about it as being an allegory, and we know that George Romero didn't set out to make an allegorical film. He didn't want to. He didn't set out to do like this grand like commentary on the world and this is the establishment and all that. So it becomes quite obvious to me that we as a society have made this particular film an emblem of our own beliefs. Is there an alternate side to that, to say, because this film didn't have that intended, it wasn't intended to be a symbol of the civil rights movement. It didn't mean to be a symbol of kind of down with the establishment, essentially, taking down the man. So was there a film at the time that was trying to be like that wanted that kind of thing, or not necessarily at the time, but in general, or is it just us? Are filmmakers just wanting to make fun, scary movies, but then we, in our Mandela effect social commentary people that we are, do we just transpose our own thoughts and beliefs and political systems and socio-economical situations onto these stories because we're human?
I think it's a combination of factors. Some of it's the 100th monkey syndrome, where, a monkey, given enough monkeys and enough typewriters, one will write War and Peace. But I think, sometimes you fall over backwards and land on your feet accidentally, Yeah. And sometimes you're just doing what's in your thoughts. And if society is exuding the same pressures on everybody, you're going to have the same thoughts. And so maybe you do something instinctively without even knowing it. Sometimes when I'm making a piece of art, I think, I like this, maybe somebody else will too.
Yeah.
And that's often a guiding force in this. Like, I'm pretty sure this is going to work. Maybe somebody else will think so too. And that's I'm not thinking about all those justifications at the time, but they come out because they're on my mind. The news is on in the background, and I'm thinking about what scares me. And those thoughts get transmuted into something else. There's an interesting thing that happens with horror movies where if you have a film that's not socially relevant, it's not a success in terms of horror films. And so you can remake Invasion of the Body Snatchers as many times as you want, but if it's not culturally relevant to tell that story at that particular moment, it's not going to work. There have been a few remakes of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The first one was in 1956 when you had people worried that their friends and neighbors were being turned into communists. And then in the 1970s, you had that threat a little bit again of you had Jonestown, and you had cults rising up. You had hippies. You had people that you knew turning into something else. About, I don't know, what was it, 10, 15 years ago, somebody tried to remake Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and it just didn't work. But I'll bet you could make it now.
Yeah.
I'll bet if you make it this year, it would totally work.
Probably. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what Jaws the shark would want you to do. Dun-dun, dun-dun. Dun 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 dun.